Hello everybody and welcome to this episode of the Dasch Cast. I am Curtis Dasch and I'm actually solo this time because I want to go ahead and address the Green Bay Packers and our season in 2020-2021, accumulating in an NFC Championship appearance and a loss at home to Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A very interesting year it kind of turned out to be overall. I never thought we would go 13-3 in back-to-back years, especially in a COVID year where honestly before the season a lot of us weren't even sure if we would have a full season. So that's something to keep an eye on with that going forward, and other teams as well. Who knows? And obviously I'll be talking a lot about how Green Bay will be next season, but in this season in particular, obviously with COVID being such a big thing, seeing how teams were going to face adversity is very interesting. Obviously we've seen teams like the Niners who were injury decimated, basically had no ways to get over it, with them dealing with not only the IR list of that's new with COVID and all that stuff, but seeing how other teams handled it very, very well, or lucked out and didn't really have to deal with it, and thankfully Green Bay was one of those teams. I want to go ahead and start with the regular season, kind of go through. I'm not going to go game by game and bore you guys with all of that kind of crap, but I will talk about a couple of games. Obviously we started off very, very strong. There was nothing negative to be said about Green Bay the first 4 or 3 weeks of us playing, stopping Minnesota, stopping Detroit. That New Orleans Saints matchup was a very interesting matchup because obviously we were all thinking it could be a preview of the NFC Championship or the playoffs, depending on who won what. The next game, obviously, being the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 6 after our bye week, obviously didn't pan out too well. Rodgers had one of the worst games I think I've seen Rodgers have in his career. It's amazing what that Tampa Bay team did, and obviously we'll be talking more about the Tampa Bay game towards the end, but I have to say, with the way Green Bay responded, going to Houston and beating Houston is one thing, and Deshaun Watson was an MVP caliber quarterback, and obviously we'll be talking about an MVP caliber quarterback in Aaron Rodgers this entire time, but seeing how we did against them, being 5-1 after responding and throwing 2 picks, which is something Rodgers doesn't do. But moving on, they faced the Niners to get revenge on Thursday Night Football a couple of weeks later, but obviously the Niners were certainly not the San Francisco 49ers we remember, just dealing with so many injuries. It really wasn't a game, 34-17, and Green Bay taking that, and then the next time they lost would have been against those Colts, and that was a strange game in particular because I felt like the Colts, obviously, and I think a lot of people who were watching this game would assume that the Colts were just trying to shoot themselves in the foot. Those holding calls, those back-to-back holding calls. I can't remember how many of them. I want to say there were 6, almost in a row, if not in a row, and just kind of giving Green Bay a chance at hope there, but losing in overtime to a very good Colts team, a very surprisingly good Colts team who have a question mark with a Hall of Fame quarterback retiring, and Phillip Rivers. They have a little bit of leeway, and maybe it could be a potential landing spot for an MVP caliber quarterback, which we'll get to in a little bit. And then you figure after that Colts game, the Packers don't lose another game until the NFC Championship. They ended up getting the 1 seed against the Chicago Bears, winning that game pretty handily, sealing that 13-3 and that 1 seed, like I had just stated, getting that playoff bye, the only playoff bye normally. Both seeds, the first and second team, obviously get a bye, but not this year with the new rules, with the expanded playoff rules, being a major factor. That 7 seed obviously did wonders. Like, who knows exactly who Green Bay could have played, who Tampa Bay could have played. Let's go ahead and deal with that Rams game first. Green Bay defeating one of the best defense, if not the best ranked defense, I believe, at the time in the league, pretty handily as well, only holding that offense to 18 points. It's very interesting to see how they played that game and then to go into the NFC Championship and to see how we dealt with that kind of adversity. The score was 26-31, and of course the big kicker everybody is going to be kind of pointing at is down 8, I believe, a couple minutes to go. We have the chance to either go for it on 4th, I believe it was 4th and 8. We were on our own 8 or something like that. And we have a chance to maybe go for it on 4th down, tie the game up at least. And sure, we got to give the ball back to Brady, who, depending on how much time we have, could be another can of worms in its own. But we ended up kicking the field goal instead, and Rodgers missed a very blatant run-in. It looked like he could have scored prior to that, but that's neither here nor there. I want to really focus on that field goal. I guess the analytics were saying, a lot of people were saying analytically, it only improves to go for it by a couple of percent. Maybe the points are more guaranteed. I was okay with the points in a way at first, but you have to keep looking at the fact that who's on the other side of the ball, and our defense hadn't proved we can stop anybody all night. Yeah, we picked off Brady twice, and we were finally starting to get some momentum, but did anybody really think that we shouldn't give Aaron Rodgers the ball at the very end of the game? We need it the most. LaFleur making that call is a very, very questionable one. And that actually leads to a string of, I guess, questionable things I'm hearing about a lot of people saying. I believe this was on Rich Eisen, for example, saying that maybe there's some dissension between LaFleur and Rodgers. And I'm sure on that play there will be some dissension, obviously. Any controversial play like that will get you a very difficult time if you do not complete it. You always, unless you do, and then you look like a genius. And I believe I've heard A.J. Hawk say something similar. If LaFleur, they end up stopping them, Packers go down and score, LaFleur looks like a genius by taking a 3 there. Nobody in their right mind really thought that taking the 3 was going to be enough. And it wasn't just taking the 3 that would have been the problem. It was the fact that we could have had points earlier on the board if it wasn't for a couple of drops by players with Aaron Rodgers. And I know Brandon actually talks about this in our Super Bowl preview. The couple of fumbles that we had weren't really helping anything at all either. And when you turn the ball over to a team like Tampa, it doesn't help. Obviously, like I said several times, having a defensive mind there is really, really helpful, and having a great draft pick in that kind of aspect would have been nice. But alas, that's not what happened. Now, having that going forward, maybe they'll plug a hole with it after that, depending on how the draft looks going forward. Of course, I'm not really sure. So we end the season with a loss in the very first time that Rodgers had an NFC Championship game at home. And in his post-game presser, and in his final post-game presser at that, he had mentioned that team was going to be really, really different. He's loved playing with the group he's had. He specifically mentions, Devontae Adams, Jamal Williams, Aaron Jones. But a lot of people's future is up in the air, and then he kind of chuckled and said even his own future was in the air. Imagine this quarterback, a 48 touchdown, 5 interception quarterback that's first in both categories. 4,299 yards, good for 7th in the NFL, an 84.3 QBR, which is good for 1st in the NFL. The team went 13-3, and basically we have a question mark as to where this guy's going to go. Although, to be fair, since, everybody's been talking about that, Packers CEO Mark Murphy has come out and said that Aaron will be in Green Bay this coming year, that we're not idiots, end quote. And I don't know, I beg to differ a little bit there, because at the same time, we never did draft anything to really help out Rodgers. Could have been nice to use that draft piece to grab a guy there, but of course, we know that is not the case. And also, Aaron Rodgers has come out on these reports that he might want a new contract. He said recently on Pat McAfee on Tuesday that he hasn't even had those kind of meetings yet. He would be in Green Bay through the end of the week. He hasn't really started his offseason thing as of this current moment in time. So it's not as if he's made outlandish demands to management or anything like that. And honestly, depending on what he is getting paid and exactly how that's going to work in the structure, I guess without all the bonuses, he's only getting paid something like 23 mil, not 33 mil, $10 million difference there. It kind of makes sense that he would want a new deal. That's Jared Goff money, and he just had an MVP-like season. He is under contract with Green Bay for another 3 years after this one. After the 2021 season, like I said, it makes it a lot easier to let go or move on and trade him if that is something Green Bay wants to do. My final thoughts on that, I would like to say that I will always be a Packers fan first. I will always root for Green Bay first. It is Green Bay versus everybody. That being said, they did push Aaron Rodgers out of the door more or less, or made it seem as if that is something they were wanting to do. The guy just had a great season. Obviously, he can still ball. Imagine if he could throw 3 picks and the team still win. That's unheard of. If Aaron Rodgers isn't playing spectacular, we don't have a chance in the fiery pits. Everybody knows that. So I will follow Rodgers to whatever team he does happen to go to, whatever team that might be, provided it's not in the division. And I will always root for Green Bay first, no matter what. The season ended on a sour note, but it was still a great season. With everything going on in the world, it was still an amazing season to have. 13-3, NFC Championship back-to-back years. There are teams that haven't won a playoff game in 20 years. And we were fighting for an NFC Championship. We were fighting for a Super Bowl berth in back-to-back years. That's saying something. I'm proud to be a Packers fan. I'm really hoping next year we can figure something out. Go Pack, go. As usual, guys, please like, comment, subscribe. Thank you very much for listening. Look forward to this coming week. We definitely have some Kansas City, Tampa Bay Super Bowl preview coming for you. Either Mahomes proves me wrong and gets his second ring, or Tom Brady gets a seventh ring, which is just mind-blowing to believe in terms of the sheer amount of Super Bowl rings that has compared to Aaron Rodgers, who I just spent this entire podcast talking about only having the one and having a shot at number 2. So, again, thank you guys very much for listening, and we will see you next clip.